Once upon a time, there lived a boy named Ekene who lost his parents at a young age. His father had owned many farmlands and palm trees, and they lived in abundance. But after his parents died in a fatal motor accident, his uncles took all his father's properties, leaving him with nothing. At 17, Ekene picked up his bags from the floor where his uncles had thrown them and headed into the bush, not knowing where to go. That night, he slept under a tree. The next morning, he discovered an old abandoned hut with no one inside. He went in and it became his new home. The following day, he went into the village begging to work on people's farmlands so he could earn money for food. He sowed firewood, cleared bushes, set traps for animals, and helped the elderly fetch water from the village stream. Ekene lived a lonely life with no one to talk to. Whenever he went into the village, no one wanted to associate with him. His peers always called him dirty because he was always covered in grime from his constant work. They never allowed him to join them in any village activities. Ekene would often go to his uncles begging them to give him the smallest piece of land, but they would chase him away with a machete. Ekene found it difficult to feed himself. His traps rarely caught anything. He mostly survived on fruits he plucked from the trees in the bush. He had no kitchen utensils to cook with, and he slept on the floor in the lonely dark hut. One day, while setting his traps in the bush, Ekene found a weak parrot that had been attacked by an animal. He picked up the parrot and took it to his hut. He cared for the parrot until it recovered and named it Ako. Ako became his only companion. Ako followed him wherever he went, but from a distance. They agreed that Ako should stay away in public because Ekene feared someone might take Ako away from him. Ekene and Ako lived in the small old hut for years. In the village, no one had ever seen the princess or knew her name. She was always in her quarters and never came out. Even her personal maid didn't know her name. Only her parents did. And she was the king's only child. One day, the king sent the town crier to summon all the eligible men in the kingdom for a brief meeting. When they all gathered, the king announced, "In the next 2 market days, any man who tells my daughter's name will marry her and be the next king." All the men stared at each other, murmuring among themselves about this great opportunity. Luckily for Ekene, Ako had flown into the village that day and overheard the king's announcement while Ekene was in the bush hunting. Ako immediately flew back and told Ekene about the opportunity. But Ekene laughed and said it was impossible to know the princess's name since no one had ever seen her. Ako reassured him that he would find a way. Some of the men traveled to neighboring villages to consult the chief priest about the princess's name. Others bribed the palace guards or sought help from the strongest chief priests in the village. But all their efforts were in vain. They all gave up, waiting to see who the lucky person would be. 3 days before the deadline, Ako told Ekene he would fly to the princess's quarters to see if anyone would call her name. That day, the princess came out to watch the sunset alone. Ako flew back without any luck. The next day, he returned and hid in a tree, watching her. He saw the princess sitting and watching the sunset. Fortunately, the queen stepped out and said, "Adugom, you came out before me today. Should I continue the story I was telling you the other day?" Immediately, Ako flew back to Ekene and revealed the name to him. Ekene couldn't believe he knew the princess's name. He doubted he would win, thinking some of the men might already know her name. But Ako assured him he would emerge the winner. The day finally arrived and everyone gathered to see who the lucky man would be. When the king announced that whoever knew the princess's name should step forward and reveal it, no one came out. Ako perched on a tree, watching. The king had almost given up when Ekene shyly stepped forward. Everyone stared in disbelief, mocking him. "Her name is Adugo," Ekene said. The king was shocked. He ordered the princess to come out, and when she did, everyone marveled at her beauty. The king announced Ekene, the heir to the throne and the princess's husband. Everyone was astonished that Ekene, the wretched boy who lives in the bush, would become the new king. Everyone, including his wicked uncles, bowed to him. The marriage ceremony was grand, with kings from far and wide attending. From then on, Ako lived with Ekene in the palace.